welcome to this little concert from my living room. I had planned to do it entirely live on YouTube, but yesterday it happened that when I ran a test, the technology didn't want to give me a good sound. So I'm recording this a few hours before you're gonna watch it, but I'm still going to go through as a concert. Maybe I should introduce myself for the people who don't know me, I don't know this channel. I'm Emelie Waldken, I'm a musician from Sweden and I play the Swedish nyckelharpa and fiddles, or violin, but in a folk way. In this little concert I'm gonna also chat a little bit, so talk about a few concepts, and mostly our red thread is going to be composition. So how I compose, how I think about my compositions or tunes in general, but especially how I write stuff. I'm not gonna give you like a step-by-step how to write tunes, but more like background on a few interesting tunes I've written and how I thought about them when I composed them. So this concert is gonna be a mix of traditional tunes and own compositions. I hope you will enjoy this little moment. Now we go to Ireland for a tune, one of the first tunes I've heard in my life. So, Mr. Malone by Carolan. Det brinner en eld, den brinner klar. Den brinner i 1000 kransar. Det brinner en eld, den brinner klar. Den brinner i 1000 kransar. Så vänd dig om, ta mig i famnen en gång och dansa med mig mera. Så vänd dig om, ta mig i famnen en gång och dansa med mig mera. Det brinner en eld, den brinner klar. Den brinner i 1000 kransar. Det brinner en eld, den brinner klar. Den brinner i 1000 kransar. Så vänd dig om, ta mig i famnen en gång och dansa med mig mera. Så vänd dig om, ta mig i famnen en gång och dansa med mig mera. So, I have announced that we're gonna talk a little bit about composition. And the first thing, more than composition actually, that can be a source of creativity, it is when you want to arrange something or modify something. And that's probably where I started composing and arranging consciously somehow. When I was a teenager and also a child, I wrote a few songs and tunes, and to be honest, I don't really want to share any of these ever. Especially the songs, the texts were usually very, very cheesy. But I had composed things, but it was more like I had an idea and had no idea what I was doing, like it just happened somehow. But when I started really arranging more consciously, I tried a little bit during teenage here and there, but it was mostly when I started having some tunes in my head a lot. And like they were so much stuck in my head that I got bored of them. I got annoyed. Other people around me also got annoyed. But I wanted to get rid of these tunes, but I could not get rid of them, and they were very good tunes. And then I started thinking maybe I can modify them, you know, like write variations. And that's pretty much how I started composing consciously. And one of these tunes was one of the polskas efter från that I had learned from Mia Marin, and that I was singing and playing all the time. And both myself and my school colleagues in Malone were getting crazy because I could not get rid of this tune. So I started trying to modify it, and I really liked the minor modes more than the major ones, and so I just tried to play it in minor, and it worked very nicely. But when you turn a major tune into minor, you have to adapt a little bit. There are places where the harmonies don't really match, or I don't know, the phrase wants to go a bit somewhere else. So that's the first way to like take those tangents somehow, not these, the metaphorical tangents, and go see where they lead you somehow, where they go. And also when I tried to put together 2 or more tunes, sometimes it's good to have kind of a bridge or something that binds them together better than just jumping from one to the next. Some tunes were very fine, but some it's better to have a little bit of something in between. So bridges are also a very good way to compose things. And for me, I really tried to listen. First, when I tried to put two tunes together, I really tried to find tunes that have something similar. It doesn't need to be the harmony, because I can actually do very harmonic bridges and change the harmony quite a bit, or you can transpose the tunes or whatever. But it's more like in their style, in what kind of images they carry with them. And the 2 next tunes I'm gonna play are the Hulga Polska and one of the polskas efter från, and they are 2 tunes that to me sound very baroque. And one is in D minor, one is in D major, but then I turned it into D minor as well. So you know, it's keys that really fit well together. I'm gonna play them in G on nyckelharpa because it sounds better, but yeah, they were the same key, but even if they hadn't been, in the feeling, I felt that they had something very, very similar somehow. They were very barockish. And what was interesting was to try to put a bit of one into the other and vice versa. So I don't know if I managed. The arrangement I'm gonna play is a very old one of mine that I still love and I still play very often. And you tell me if you can hear something that binds them together in a good way. Now I'm going to play a tune that is in Swedish but from Ukraine. The people who have watched the video about Gammalsvenskby, the old Swedish village in Ukraine, and the people who live there and their story, they know what I'm talking about. If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it if you're interested in a bit complex European history, and you can understand that people with Swedish language maybe do not live in Sweden, and that maybe they can be called Ukrainians but also Estonians. Peoples are more than just one thing, and movements of populations happen, and then it leads to very complex situations and people with very complex stories, basically. And this tune is something I wanted to do for Ukraine and the current situation there, and what I decided to do was to ask you to please, if you want to give something for this concert, if you think that I would give that much to this artist for this little concert, I would ask you to please give that sum, not to me, but to United Help Ukraine. Link in the description. So just after this video, if you like the concert, which I hope, please go donate what you can, what you feel correct, to United Help Ukraine. Thank you very much. Now let's talk more about composition, shall we? So I have different places or settings in which tunes come to me more. And one of them is the kitchen, or a bit random places. It can be also, I don't know, I'm doing some cleaning, or something that is a little bit boring and doesn't really require so much of my brain. I don't know, you just have to stir the thing for 30 minutes or something, in cooking. And usually when I'm stuck in these kind of activities, I try to entertain myself. So I'm starting to dance a bit around and sing stuff a little bit. And very often it's very silly stuff, like I'm steering the pot, I'm steering the pot, I'm steering the pot, pot, pot. Something like that. You get the idea. And sometimes those are really, really bad. And they are in the file of never open again on my computer. But sometimes there are good ideas there. Maybe the text is silly, but it needs to be changed. Or maybe the melody was a little bit too easy, but with a bit of work, it can get somewhere. And I think it happens a lot when, as I said, I'm a bit bored, but I also have some kind of higher spirits. And very often in the kitchen, I end up composing happy tunes. Or at least a bit jumpy in the harmonies. And the next tune is one of these. I composed the A part in the kitchen. But then was the question, what am I gonna do for the B part? Because in Swedish folk music, most of the time we have an A part, we play 2 times, and an B part, which we also play 2 times. And then we play the whole thing several times. Depends. Sometimes there is a C part and so on, but usually A and B are quite standard. And composing a B part, to me, is one of the most important things about composing, because an A part, having just a little idea of something, is not that hard, because a little bit of melody can be just like a little bit of an improved scale or a chord, it can be very simple. In the A part, you mostly present an idea, you introduce an idea. I tend to think of an A part a bit as like the summary of a book on the back. If it's a good one, you read it and you have an idea of, is it fantasy, is it realistic, is it an autobiography, is it, what kind of book is it, what is the story, what is it gonna talk about, a little bit, and you have the name of the author. It gives you a frame, an idea of what it is. And that's a bit the A part for me. The A part introduces the rhythm, so the main rhythmical structure. In Scandinavia we have very defined rhythmical structures for dancing, vals, schottis, polska and so on. But also a bit more detailed than that, usually the A part is also showing if you have lots of notes, quick ones, or on the contrary, if it's more like long notes, a little bit, quieter somehow in the rhythm. Is it something like dun da 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 dun da da dun dun da 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 dun, or is it something like dun dun da dun da dun da dun, which is a little bit quieter? Yeah, it defines a little bit the rhythm and how complex it's gonna go. And it also defines the harmony, which key are we playing on? Do we change key? Do we stay in a very modal way? Do we stay in the same key all the time? Do we change? Where do we change? How much do we change? Do we have accidentals or not? Which kind of scale is it? All this kind of stuff. And there we're settled with our A part. And the B part is usually something that broadens the idea of the A part. So, I don't know, maybe it's gonna take a slightly different key or a related key but not exactly the same. Or maybe it's gonna, expand in a direction or another. Maybe the rhythm is gonna take one little bit of the A part and develop it, for example. Or do something a little bit contrasting with the A part. But if you go contrasting, you have to be very careful that it still fits with the A part. And for this tune, I really went into this kind of contrasting idea. So my A part was quite happy, jumpy, and a little bit fast. So I decided to go for something a bit longer notes in the B part. Still the same key and a similar feeling, but longer notes. And the A part was much in the high register of the fiddle. so I decided that the B part was gonna go lower. And last but not least, a little thing that is really dear to my heart is that between the A and the B part you have a clear separation, but at the end of the B part there is something that leads back into the A part very clearly, and I really like when this happens in tunes, either mine or traditional ones or someone else's, because I feel that it feels more organic to play the tune again. It's not like you start the whole thing again, but it's like you want to, because it leads there. So I'm gonna play for you this little tune, started in the kitchen, finished on the fiddle, and you will listen and you will maybe hear all these little details I've just talked about. I hope you can. This tune is called Swedenland, and it's dedicated to my friends playing in the Swedenland spelmanslag, so the folk ensemble in Switzerland. Just checking some tuning a bit. I apologize in advance for any possible whistling happening. I have had problems with my strings lately, so they are not matched at all, and some of them sound way more than others and whistle, and it's a bit of a mess. I could not fix it in time for today. Sorry. We'll do the best with what we have. Swedenland. Was a happy tune. It always makes me happy to play it. Also because I think about my friends in Switzerland. Oh, I'm so happy. You know, we played together a lot, and I was hoping that they would still play together after I left for Sweden. And they did. And they created a folk ensemble. So, yay to you people in Switzerland who play Swedish folk music. And now I want to tell you a story. Marcel Jeanne was a French woman who did many unusual things in her life. Amongst many, she passed letters from occupied France to free France and back during the Second World War. And she also had, for example, ideas about pedagogy, how to teach to children. For example, just, you know, taking care of who the child is as a person, and maybe if they don't understand the usual way of teaching, maybe there is another way. Maybe taking slightly another route will just work better for this particular child or individual. It works with adults as well. Or that maybe we should not just read from textbooks and learn by heart, but we should put into more practice the things we have learned. And these things might sound very obvious to us nowadays, but they were quite new ideas in the 1940s and 50s. And this quite incredible woman, if I may say so, although I have never met her, on one morning that was very cold, icy and misty, kissed her daughter goodbye and went to work. Back then, cars did not have seat belts, and there was a lot of ice on the road, and the car ended up in a tree, and Marcel-Jeanne did not live to see the age of 40. Her daughter is my mother, and some time ago I was walking, and this is another place where I tend to compose quite a lot. It's when I'm either walking or biking, and I don't really have much interesting going on around. Like, it's either dark or very misty, as it was that day, or it's just not super interesting around. And I'm alone with my thoughts and with my feelings, and I can process my thoughts and feelings. And especially when my feelings match what's around me. I don't know, if the weather is very melancholic, for example, then maybe I can go dig into my own melancholy and, you know, explore it and understand it a bit better. And this, with the rhythm of the walking, works with biking, but not as well. Walking is the best. Usually it's quite musical somehow, you know. Emotions can be translated into music. Music also helps channel emotions a lot, so these are quite close, for me at least, and for many musicians, I guess, and people who love music. And with the rhythm of the walk, you can easily get into some kind of creative mode. This works very well for me. And that day it was cold, icy and misty, and I was there and I just, you know, let the cold and mist come inside my emotions and dig out some notes. And I composed little bits, and once home I put them on the fiddle and it became a tune. Very melancholic tune. And I recorded it right away and sent it to my mother because I thought she might like it. And she got quite emotional because it had been exactly 60 years on that very day that Marcel-Jeanne, her mother, had disappeared into the mist. And when I told her how I had composed the tune, she got quite emotional. So I decided to dedicate this tune to my grandmother that I have never met and who disappeared into the mist and cold. She was very tiny and light, and therefore was often called the feather. And as she disappeared into the mist, I called the tune The Feather in the Mist. La plume dans la brume. Another way to compose is to just improvise around something. I've never been fond of people who tell me that improvisation is just, you just play something, because it's very hard to play in the void when you don't have any indication of playing something. But I mentioned earlier the rhythmical patterns that we have in Scandinavia, and actually in many other types of music, folk, traditional and also modern. Especially dance music is quite obvious because you need some kind of rhythm to dance. And using one of these patterns, and especially one that has quite some personality already, it's really helpful. So, for example, you can just have it in your body or in a recording or in your feet. I tend to stomp a lot, which is quite traditional for Nordic musicians. But you can have like a recording of a basic pattern and play around. And you can also just give into a specific style. I'm gonna explain what I mean. For that I'm gonna need my differently tuned fiddle. Parenthesis. You know this joke about how many instruments does a musician need? And the answer is just one more. Well, it's a little bit different for fiddlers. For fiddlers, I tend to think that the answer is one fiddle per tuning. At least that's pretty much the case for me. It's so practical, you don't need to retune, you just have one fiddle for each tune, you know. And closing the parenthesis. Back to our rhythmical patterns and composition. I'm gonna introduce you to hurv, which is a style of music from western Sweden on the border with Norway. It's a type of tune that is not a rhythmical type, but a stylistic type. Usually it's mostly polskas, but I'm not sure if there aren't other types of rhythms that can be used in hurv. I don't know, I've only found polskas. But yeah, don't think that it's only polskas, I'm not sure. And a hurv is a tune that has two very different parts. So we talked about A and B parts earlier, and I said that it's important that even if they are contrasting, that they still fit together. And hurv takes that to pretty much the extreme. So you have one part that is high on the fiddle, and usually quite complicated. It can be delicate or it can be just fully crazy, but it has lots of notes and it's quite complicated. And the other part is, on the other hand, low on the fiddle and quite simple, or it's like the same pattern that repeats itself a lot. A bit like a riff, if you want. So you have this, this contrast between the high and complex and the low and repetitive, somehow. And that's hurv. And it's a very nice type of concept to work around with, because, okay, you work around this idea of making something very different, and most hurvs that I've heard at least are in this short first beat polska. So you have this tam-pa, ta-ka-tam-pa, ta-pa-tam-pa, ta rhythm, and it's also one of the A bass regions. You don't have only A bass, but you have lots of tunes in. So you are pretty much a lot in D. And you are in D, you have this rhythm, and you have to compose something with very contrasting parts. That's not that hard actually, because the frame is quite well defined, but you still can write whatever you want. And just before the pandemics, I discovered with delight the repertoire of Särna, which is Western Sweden and has some hörvar. And actually the third one I'm gonna play is from Särna. It's Storhurven, the big hurv. And I fell in love with that repertoire, but then we were all supposed to be apart from each other everywhere in the world. So I could not go and jam with people and learn more about that repertoire. So I nerded on my own, and I ended up composing 2 hörvar that are inspired by the little bit I know of Särna style. And as they were composed in isolation time, They are called, the first one, Distanshurven. I don't need to translate this one, I guess. And the second one, Ensamhurven, so the alone hurv. Pretty self-explanatory, I guess. Good enough. I started wrong. I started with the second one. Yeah, the other one. Now it's time for a bit more nyckelharpa. We need to calm down a little bit the fiddles tend to go a little bit crazy. So let's go a bit into lower register. With one of my absolute favorite slängpolskor. It's from Mörkö, which is one of the big sources, like big places for slängpolska, and I tend to call it Mörkö rullstråk, so rolling bow. You will see why. Var det du eller var det jag som gick i dansen så bra? Var det du eller var det jag som gick i dansen så bra? Vi super och vi rumlar, vi dansar och vi tumlar och kom. Du snygga gosse, gå i dansen med mig. Vi super och vi rumlar, vi dansar och vi tumlar och kom. Du snygga gosse, gå i dansen med mig. Var det du eller var det jag som gick i dansen så bra? Var det du eller var det jag som gick i dansen så bra? Vi super och vi rumlar, vi dansar och vi tumlar och kom. Du snygga gosse, gå i dansen med mig. Vi super och vi rumlar, vi dansar och vi tumlar och kom du sina gosse, gå i dansen med mig. Var det du eller var det jag som gick i dansen så bra? Var det du eller var det jag som gick i dansen så bra? Vi super och vi rumlar, vi dansar och vi tumlar och kom du vackra flicka, gå i dansen med mig. Vi super och vi rumlar, vi dansar och vi tumlar och kom du vackra flicka, gå i dansen med mig. This one is for all the friends from Leipzig and for all the people who are missing dancing and are really happy that things are happening again, including me, and then we can dance again. Yeah. Now into the last little bit about composition. I think the best way for me to compose things is when I have a lot of energy inside me and or lots of feelings, emotions, something to say somehow, something that wants out. And I just take time with an instrument and I try to not think about tunes I already know, but I try to just explore sound. I don't know. It's just a little tiny pattern so far, but you know, you just take a few notes. There's something there, could become a tune. So you just play around some ideas. Maybe you try to find, on nyckelharpa it's quite good to find intervals because we have the keyboard. So I really like to play around chords a little bit, or not full chords, but just an interval. And some intervals to me feel close or open, sunny or dark. It depends also what you pair them up with. Just this, it has a characteristic, but like it's not that much of a personality somehow yet, but very open, but much darker somehow. So I just play around some stuff and I try to just, what if I would do a little scale down? What if I would, you know, just trying things. That's actually full improvisation if you want. But I'm not even trying to compose a tune. I'm not having an idea, I want to improvise something. I'm just, this is my body and I'm trying to talk with it. I'm trying to tell it that I'd like to express something. And I think what is difficult is you need to have a certain level of like technicity. You need to be able to play certain technical things, else you would quickly be limited in what you play. In that case, maybe composing without the instrument, like singing or something, might be easier, or on another instrument and then coming to that instrument. See what I mean? Like, it's better to compose on an instrument that you feel familiar with. It's easier. You have more technicalities, you have more notes and more techniques that you can do. But just focusing on the sound and what does it express of me, or what do I want to express, and trying to think out of all the patterns you already know. That's very hard for me because, you know, Scandinavian folk music, we have all those patterns, and if I want to compose something, it ends up being either a howling, a schottis, or a polska usually. But maybe I can try to do something else, you know? I rarely manage, and again, many of these attempts just end up in the file of we're not gonna dig into that again because they were just bits and patterns. Maybe someday I can use them in an arrangement, but many are just not that interesting. But sometimes you end up finding very nice things, and sometimes even magic happens. and that's the tune I'm gonna play now. I was feeling very happy, very strong somehow. I took the nyckelharpa and the tune jumped into my fingers. I am not lying, I took the nyckelharpa and I played the tune and it was there. At once, with all its parts, all its details, it was done. At once. I never understood how this one came. I didn't see it coming, and it's one of my favorite own tunes, if I might have a favorite. If I may have a favorite. It has changed names a lot. I'm playing it with Sval Duo, by the way, and we're gonna play in Switzerland, and in 2-3 weeks. Link in the description to my agenda. And also I will play solo, and I will play also this tune next weekend in the Netherlands. So for the Swiss and the Dutchies, please be there and listen and dance, and we're gonna give some workshops too. But for now we're gonna listen to the tune that is nowadays called, but it might change, instant hulling, like instant coffee, but it was hulling. You didn't even need to add the water, it was already done. I just don't get tired of this tune. I feel a bit silly because it's my own tune, but I just never get tired of it. I'm getting to the last tune, last arrangement, it's 2 tunes, of this little concert. I hope you liked it and maybe you learned something or you have a bit of matter to think about composition and music in general. I will remind you to please, if you liked it, if you would pay something for a concert like this, please go to United Help Ukraine, link in the description, and donate to them what you would in principle give to me. Thank you very much. This is very important to do, to use our money where it's needed, you know. Yes, buying instruments is also needed, but helping others that are in terrible situations is very high on the list. I would like to thank my patrons for their suggestions. They have lots of ideas all the time, and a few of the things I talked about were suggested by them, sometimes a long time ago, so I guess they were patient. I still don't get any money from YouTube, neither from like the ads in the videos. Normally there shouldn't be any ads in my videos, because I don't get paid for these, so I remove them. Let me know if you do get ads in my videos, because that should not happen. And I'm not doing sponsorships either, at least not paid sponsorships, because I don't believe in advertisement, paid advertisement. It doesn't feel correct to me. I would only recommend something that I genuinely find good, not my violin strings. Not happy about these. I'm not gonna disclose the brand, but not happy about these. I could make some advertisement for the Geva nyckelharpa bow. You notice that I'm playing with the Geva. It's very cheap, it's on Thomann, and I should get money from them because I've been recommending this bow everywhere. Very decent, a very good bow. Very happy with it when my good Condi one is broken. Oops, I dropped it. Nothing bad, just a little crack in the decorations, so no problem. Sorry, I'm rambling a little bit. I would like to thank also Hugo, who came here yesterday to help me with the technique, and thanks to him we discovered that the sound was gonna be very, very bad if I recorded that entirely live, and that's why I didn't do it. There are ways to do it, I just could not bother learning a whole new program in 24 hours. So, yeah. And I would like to thank you for watching. I don't know how many of you have watched, nor if you're still there. Let me know what you preferred. What was your favorite part of this concert? Which tune? I will put probably a list of the tunes in the description. And also the talks, which parts were interesting. Please react on that. How do you compose if you write any music? Or do you want to compose? Which instruments do you use? Which processes? I would be really interested to talk nerdily about these things. And now on to the two last tunes, which are two of my absolute favorite tunes. And here I just want to give the little last bit of nerdy talk about composition, which is about finishing something. This is more for like a concert or a CD or, you know, some kind of project, but I believe a lot in the importance of endings. The beginning of something is usually very important to like selling purposes. If I have a bad tune or not so catchy in the beginning of a concert, especially here in a video, people are gonna click away. So I need to have something good for the beginning. And it needs to be also good through, so people stay engaged and still find it nice. And it's true for music, but it's true for books, it's true for like writing, it's true for lots of things that have a beginning, development and an end. But I especially find important the ending in music, because when I listen to a concert, I tend to drift away in my thoughts quite a bit. I'm not so much here sometimes. Sometimes I am, but sometimes I just, you know, I let the music carry me away and I go into thoughts about various things. And then when the music ends, it has to not break that. The ending has to be really well fitting and really well closing, like finishing the whole thing basically. Both every tune and the whole concert. One of the things I absolutely hate is a bit older recordings, not that much in folk, but more like in pop and rock and so on, where you have a good tune, but the ending is that they just play the same part many times and someone adds a decrease the volume filter on it. It's terrible. It's the worst type of ending ever for me. I prefer if the ending is messy and just falls apart. It's better, in my opinion. I'm glad it's not really something that is done anymore. Personally, when I arrange, just like playing solo a little tune or something, what I really like is to not close an ending too much. Similar for stories, when I read a story or watch a movie or something, I like when there is some kind of opening. Like, I don't know, the main character goes on a trip. They don't just like come home and stay there and that's the end somehow, but they have some openings for something else. Not that I want another book, you know, or another story, but just so it feels that life goes on. And I'm similar with music. I like when a tune does not fully close, like it's not fully closed at the end. I like when everything is well wrapped up, but there is a little part where the energy can kind of float away and become something else in the world. Something like that. It sounds really weird, but maybe you've noticed I like to use a little bit unusual or unexpected chords at the end of a tune. So, yeah, that was my little last point about something. I like when an ending is well written. And the two tunes I want to finish with are En Konstig Fan, so a weird guy, because it's quite a weird tune, and Polska från Skog, which is perhaps the most beautiful tune ever written. Perhaps. I don't know who wrote it. It's a traditional. It's insanely beautiful. Love it. I can't say it's my favorite because I love so many, but it's very, very beautiful.